Today's talk is going to be a very interesting one, so please tune in with an open heart and mind. Today, joining me is my dear friend Anthony. Anthony is such a bubbly person, always a life of the party, and knows exactly how to put a smile on your face. Anthony is currently studying psychology, which follows into a law degree. I'm so thankful and excited that Anthony can join me today. We'll be focusing on the topic of men's mental health and well-being. I feel like this is something that we need to be more open about, in particular during a time where we've been cut off from the rest of the world. The statistics around men's mental health definitely shocked me. I knew this topic needed to be spoken about more openly and become a conversation at the table. Before I begin, I just want to leave you with this. Men make up 3 out of 4 suicides every single day in Australia. If we don't begin to have the conversations with the boys and men in our lives, these numbers will only be on the rise. Also, please keep in mind, if you're feeling mentally unwell, please seek medical and professional advice. So the most important question of all, how have you been feeling during this time, Anthony?
Look, I haven't been feeling too bad, to be honest with you, Evang. Obviously, when you're locked down in your house, your mental health is going to play up a little bit. But considering the circumstances, I feel like the second lockdown, at least the first lockdown was horrible. That was pretty full on because it was probably obviously the first time I've ever experienced something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And there was just a lot of personal stuff going on. But the second lockdown, I reckon, wasn't too bad. I think I knew how to deal with it. Well, realistically, from the first time, I knew how to deal with mental health better. I think probably one of the challenges with the first lockdown is probably, sinking your life to this new way of kind of living. So then the second time, when you've already got the gist of it and you've got things almost a plan, it's easier.
That's so true. I agree completely. It's just, shifting the schedule to lockdown schedule.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but it is what it is.
It is. We'll get right into it about men's mental health. That's what we're talking about today.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
why are men ashamed to talk about how they are feeling in terms of their mental health?
Okay, so I reckon, I don't think it's consciously done at all. I don't think it's consciously done at all, but I think men are taught to suppress. They're taught to suppress their feelings. So I think I was actually thinking about this. I've got 2 nephews, as you know, Evange, and I've also got a cousin she's a girl and she's really young too. And when I think about it, I think when something happens as simple as like falling down, I think we tend to treat girls and guys differently, even from a really young age. I think it's really unconscious, but just different stuff. Like if a boy falls down and cuts his knee, we'll be like, yeah, but you're tough. Come on, you're tough. And that's how we teach them to get over it. And then they learn, yeah, I'm tough. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt me. With a little girl, I think people tend to smother them and they learn how to deal with their emotions. They're actually allowed to deal with their emotions. They're allowed to feel things. They're allowed to feel that pain. Whereas guys aren't as much, I think. Obviously, any parent is still going to make sure their kid's okay and make sure their kids feel their emotions. But I think our default to make the kid feel better is you're so tough, you can get over it. So when you're constantly validating someone through not feeling emotion, then they're probably going to learn how to suppress emotion. I was also going to say, I went to an all-boys school, as again, you probably know, Evange. And I don't think mental health was ever treated in any way but like in a clinical sense. Like, how do I explain it? It was always like, even though it was spoken about, it was spoken about very
briefly,
like professionally. It wasn't have a chat with your mates about it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, look, everyone goes through it. It wasn't a teacher's coming up front and telling us how they've battled with mental health. It was they're getting professionals from outside of school talking about the statistics, talking about this and talking about that. And I think probably the worst thing with mental health is how clinical it is.
It doesn't make it relatable when you have, say, doctors come in with the stats.
No, not at all.
As young boys, back to your experience as going to boys' school, it probably doesn't make it relatable. Like, you just kind of brush it off. But when it's a young person or someone saying, I've been through this is what I've done, it kind of opens the conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And when it's treated as clinical, like I've had a few chats with my friends about this. Until I kind of experienced like anxious thoughts and depressive thoughts and stuff like that, I don't think I really believed in it. I feel like I was not brought up to believe, but kind of just thought it was a bit of attention seeking, but it's obviously not. It's really serious. It's probably our generation's biggest issue. But I think the clinical nature of it makes people, scared to touch it and scared to talk about it in a less professional way.
And I think even when you say mental illness, it has a negative connotation. You kind of think, oh, there's something wrong with me. But in reality, everyone has anxious thoughts. Everyone feels down. So I think we just need to normalize it a bit more, that it's okay to feel not okay.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I learned about this in psych. Anxiety is literally a basic human trait or feeling, I guess, that literally protected us when we were cavemen from things like predators and stuff like that. It's a basic human trait. But for some reason nowadays, as I said, less and less each day, it's treated like something that's like,
no,
don't talk about it.
I know. That actually follows on to my next question. How do you start that conversation with a mate that you're worried about? And what certain advice would you give to them?
Well, I feel like there's even a problem in that question. Sorry, Evan.
That's all right. Tell me.
You don't need to be worried about a mate to ask them how they're going. I feel like a lot of the time, probably people that are going through stuff, you don't actually know because they're so concerned with putting on a face.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't actually know. I think probably one of the biggest things, there's two things that I suggest for that: regular checkups on your mates and your friends. Just regularly checking up on them, how are you, even if it's just once a month, checking in on them, making sure they're okay. And probably even bigger than that is telling them how you're feeling when you're feeling a bit shitty. If you're telling them how you're feeling, they're going to be way more inclined to tell you that they're feeling bad. If you're telling them, look, honestly, I'm really, really not enjoying life right now, and then you're telling them about it, and then you say, how about you? How are you going?
Yeah.
They're going to be way more inclined to feel like you relate to them and that you're not going to judge them and that you're going to listen to them. So I think, talking about, because obviously it's not like mental health and struggles with mental health aren't isolated incidents. It's not like one person has it and no one has it. And I'm not saying to say every single person you know your struggles and your stuff like that. That's probably more damaging because you're keeping it consistent with everyone so that your whole life is surrounded around it.
I watched a video just before I was preparing for this, and I don't know his name, but he said, don't worry alone, which means you don't have to tell everyone, but even one of your closest friends, your partner, a family member, just tell someone so you're in it together. And also being vulnerable, which I wanted to being vulnerable, because once you become vulnerable, then I'll think, you know what, this person's not perfect. They're going through things. I feel more comfortable saying how I'm feeling. But I'll go on to the next question. Do you believe men have societal expectations that they have to live up to? And if so, what are they?
I feel like we spoke about this kind of in the second question, where we're kind of just taught to have to be tough. But I feel like the younger generation especially is a less have to be tough.
Yeah, you always have to be the tough guy.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a bad thing because it's good to be tough, but it's also, you shouldn't be seen as weak when you do let out emotions. I think that's the negative side to it.
Yeah. I also think it's negative. I remember in school, and this adds to the clinicalness and the professionalness around it. There were campaigns and stuff we showed called Real Men Cry. I know this sounds bad, but I think stuff like that is also negative because it's implying that men that can't cry or don't cry that much aren't real men. I get that it's trying to combat the don't cry, you're a man, but having such definite terms can be just as negative. You can say stuff like real men can cry or it's okay to cry, but I think saying stuff like real men cry, having any definite terms is negative
everyone
in itself.
And I think everyone expresses their emotions in different ways too. I think men should definitely express their emotions to whatever extent they feel necessary. So some people do prefer, keeping to themselves. Others prefer talking to a friend. So it just depends on who you are too. So I don't think generalizing all men cry when some don't. So I think just normalize, say if you feel comfortable, speak about it. If you don't, then we're always here for you when you feel ready. I think that's a better take on it.
100%.
I will go on to the next question. So this relates to similar on how to start a conversation, but what can family and friends do to more so support the men in their lives that are going through a rough time?
I kind of link this with kind of like school education. I think families need to be better educated on mental health, because you got to remember our parents' generation aren't really that they were kind of brought up like really men are tough, like that kind of attitude. So I think the problem lies with thinking that it's just our generation that needs helping. I
Yeah.
think it needs to start with them. And I've always thought this. I think instead of getting us in for lectures and stuff during school on mental health and stuff like that, they should be getting parents in and saying, make sure you're talking to your kids about this, make sure like educating parents on how serious of an issue it is. Because my mum wouldn't know the suicide rates. My mum wouldn't know that she's had 5 boys. She wouldn't know that 3 out of 4 suicides are men. She wouldn't know
That's
that.
so true. That
Yeah.
is true.
So I think telling the families so that they actually can support the kids, because they don't actually really know. And friends, I guess, if you're like I said before, speak to them about your problems. Maybe not every single friend you've got, but your closest friends, speak to them about your problems and they'll feel comfortable talking to you about theirs.
Exactly. And I think when you know better, you do better. So I think even for parents, it's
100%.
something they need to just look into a bit.
Yeah, this goes back to the whole it's treated so clinically. I remember the first time I had some pretty full-on depressive thoughts, probably like halfway through year 12.
Yeah.
And I remember being so scared and thinking it was like a disease. And like, well, it kind of is a disease, but meaning thinking that it was something that I just had to wait till it was gone. And it's not something that you can actually work on.
We live in a time of internet where there is amazing resources out there, and I'm going to add some helplines
100%.
too, which, and if you are feeling down or you need some advice, you can click on. So I know you touched on that you have felt low in those times where you didn't feel so great. And during those times, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, well, like I said, in year 12 was probably the first time I ever dealt with like those kind of thoughts or anything. And I think in year 12, I was, one, very independent, and two, I was very positive and optimistic. So I was shocked when I started feeling kind of shitty about stuff that I didn't even know why I was feeling shitty. So in year 12, I probably dealt with it the wrong way. I got really scared and didn't know what to do. So I just kept it to myself and kind of just waited for it till I felt better. And then I reckon, honestly, it probably lasted about 6 months of just some pretty shitty thoughts and just not feeling too good about myself. And then I reckon I didn't feel it again until I didn't feel like down again until about early this year. And I feel like I'm a lot less independent now. I rely on my friends a lot more, which to an extent is really good. It's good to talk to your friends a lot and stuff like that. So my best friend Sonia, as soon as I was feeling a bit down and a bit anxious, she knew about it straight away. I was in a relationship at the time, so they knew about it straight away. But I think talking about it made a massive difference when, like, not even just in the long run, at that specific time, you feel such a relief.
Yes.
But I didn't know. And then what was really hard, and this goes back to the previous questions about families and stuff like that. I had to tell my mum that I was feeling pretty shitty and wanted to go see a counselor or a psychologist or something like that. And obviously she didn't care, but she obviously didn't really, it wasn't like, oh my God, this is horrible. She was just like, yeah, maybe you should go see a uni counselor. You're probably going through a bit of a depressive phase or an anxious phase. Go see a uni counselor. And yeah, that was probably the best. I reckon the best thing you can do after talking to people around you is going to seeing a counselor, because even though it is a professional way of dealing with it, I think they have actual tips and stuff like that that aren't this broad, wide internet that's going to give you all this information that you don't know what to do with. I think when you go to a counselor, they ask you what you need, what you've been doing, what thoughts you're having, and they like narrow it down to you better. So I think that was the best thing. And counselors, I'm pretty sure every school and every uni have some sort of free counseling and free psychology. Definitely. So yeah, I don't. It's not that inaccessible. It's pretty accessible. And yeah, no, that was really, really good, because they just give you tips. They give you tips on how to deal with it. They don't make you feel like icky.
They make you normal, a human being.
100%. And I think that's the thing. I think when you talk to your friends and stuff too, you'll find out that they've probably all had these thoughts, been through this kind of stuff. So they'll kind of validate you.
Exactly. And you'll be surprised how many people may feel like that, but do kind of suppress their emotions because they just think, oh, it's not a big deal. I don't want to speak about it, or I don't want to seem weird, which it's not weird at all. It's normal. And like you said, I think speaking to a psychologist, counselor, they do find a direct way for you to deal with it, because the internet has so many resources and it can be overwhelming because they give you so much information and it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the internet, like you said, it's overwhelming. And I think it almost supports the belief that it's a disease and it has an end. It is, like I said, it is a disease, but it doesn't necessarily, not that it doesn't have an end, but I think when you're in such a bad space, you're thinking, I'm never going to get out of this. How do I ever get out of this? It's not a normal process. It's not, you don't think of it as a normal process, even though it is. You don't think of it as I'm something's gone wrong. There's something here that in my life that's not working and I need to evaluate what's going on. Because at the end of the day, anxiety and depression, there's always a cause. There's always, it can be as simple as, it doesn't have to be something like you're going through a breakup or you've lost a family member. It can be something as simple as you're a perfectionist and your life isn't going perfect right now. Even though that's not a specific event that is a cause, it's still a cause. It can be something really minute like that you need to tackle, that you need to work through, because at the end of the day, if you don't, it's going to, whether you eventually get over it in 6 months, it's going to come back because you haven't actually dealt with it. You've just suppressed it.
I think the most important thing is knowing that you're not alone. There's so many people out there that love you and care for you and want the best for you.
Yeah. I think a lot of people say that kind of stuff, and I think it's important for people to know that. But I think what's scary when people are in depressive episodes and depressive thoughts is feeling like they don't care about that kind of stuff because they're so low, thinking, I don't care if everyone loves me because I don't feel anything. But I think people need to realize they do actually care about that stuff. It's just you've got this negative filter going on. You're blocking all your thoughts, and it's stopping you from processing all the good things.
It takes a lot of courage to come on here because a lot of people will see this, to talk about openly. So I'm very proud of you. So thank you for opening up like that. That's something I didn't even know myself. So thank you. And I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of...
It's because you're not one of my close friends.
I know. Damn.
I'm joking.
Okay.
I'm joking.
No, I'm very proud. And I think it's normal. Everyone goes through something. Everyone has a story. So speak your story. During the pandemic, we've definitely seen an increase in mental health. We've also seen that 62% of men have been expressing anxiety during this time, alongside 1,200 suicides during COVID. Why do you think the lockdown Victoria is currently in has seen a rise in mental health issues, in particular amongst men?
So I think this kind of comes down to basic psychology. I think loneliness and isolation have a direct correlation with depression and with anxiety and with mental illness, because one of the first things people will say and like professionals will say is don't stop doing your life. Don't stop going about your everyday routine. You need to keep living your life. You need to keep doing the stuff that you usually enjoy, because you'll eventually realize that you enjoy it still. You love it still. You want to live your life. You don't want to isolate yourself, because then you're just making matters worse. And I think for a lot of people, it's probably just brought about their suppression. A lot of people have probably suppressed their emotions during normal day life, or haven't really dealt with it. So having to be isolated has brought everything about and brought everything out. So I think, it pretty much goes down to basic psychology of a correlation between depression, anxiety, and isolation. I think the FBI in America from 1960s onwards said that they have been using isolation as a cracking technique of prisoners, because they know that isolation for long periods of times make people go a bit insane. So I think it makes pure sense that mental health is affected when you're isolated.
It does so much. And I think it's another one. People, their freedoms, like they can't go out, they can't do this, they can't go, especially for males, they can go to the pub and have a drink, they can't go see their mates and watch the footy, whatever they do. That small stuff makes a big impact.
I was also going to say, I think it also has to do with goals. Humans are goal-driven animals, creatures. And when people are losing their jobs, when people are unable to go to university, unable to go to school, when people aren't able to work on things that they want to work on, then your goals, your main beliefs, the things that you want to achieve are being knocked down. And when the biggest things in your life are being knocked down, you're obviously going to feel pretty bad about that.
So when that's taken away, from them. It's like, what's left? I think 8 months is a lot of time to self-reflect, a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Unless
Very
you're a
crazy.
Buddhist monk.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so if men begin to explore their emotional range, how does this help not only themselves, but others around them?
Yeah, we've touched on this. Like I said, if you're talking about it, your friends and family are going to feel more encouraged to do so themselves. Like, if you're telling people closest to you what made you feel down, what made you feel good, even like it's good to
Yeah.
talk about what made you feel good. It's always good to
Yes.
talk about that. Then your friends are going to be more likely to share their ups and downs with you, and then I think overall less frustration is going to be built up,
Yes.
and then I guess hopefully a decrease in mental health problems as opposed to just mental health awareness.
Yeah, and I think it's a domino effect in a sense as well. If someone, say one of your guy friends starts speaking about how they're feeling, another one think, you know what, this is normal. My friend's going through this. I'm gonna start speaking. It's just a domino effect. And then, another person. So just normalizing it. So just think talking about your feelings. If you did something
Yeah,
good at school or you got the job promotion, say to
yeah,
mates, oh, I did this, I felt really good. If you had
yeah,
a bad day, tell them. So I think
yeah,
it's starting expressing your feelings.
yeah. Yeah, and I also, you talking about happy, this doesn't really have that much relation to the question. You talking about happiness and stuff like that. I think it's really, really important. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist, but I think it's really, really important to say that I think there's this misconception that like you need to be happy all the time. So like you when you're going through a bad spell, you're like, I just can't wait to be happy again, or
Yeah.
I just can't wait to feel like I'm happy. I feel like it's such a silly expectation to put on yourself because happiness is an emotion. We're humans. Or any animal really. We experience emotions variably. We don't experience one. We're not just like, oh, I'm happy. That's going to last for 6 years.
No.
Obviously, you're going to experience sadness. You're going to experience anxiety. You're going to experience everything. So I think it's really scary. Not to mention when you're depressed, and these people with the clinical depression and anxiety still do experience happiness. They
Yes.
still do experience like good emotions. It's just on a lesser scale because your brain has less access to the more positive emotions. So yeah, I think it's important to say that when people are in depressive episodes, sitting there being like, I can't wait to be happy again, it's actually probably a lot worse for your depressive episode to be sitting there feeling like that, because it's you are feeling spouts of happiness during your depressive circle, and you will be feeling spouts of depression during your happy times, I guess.
Exactly. And it's an unrealistic expectation. Like you said, it's a feeling. So you can't feel happy 24/7. That's impossible. And as a human, we go through so many different emotions, even on a daily basis. So I think it's very important to touch on that. We'll go on to something a bit more personal about you now. So
Let's do it.
I know, let's go. When was the last time Anthony cried?
Probably, I believe it or not, I actually talk about this with my guy mates quite a bit. We
Oh, that's
have
cool. Okay.
we have jokes about it. I mean, not jokes in a bad way. We talk about it in a
Yeah,
good
no,
way, but it's jokingly.
yeah, I get it.
I actually never used to be a cry. I never used to cry. I don't think. I mean, when I was younger, I did, but when like all through high school, I was me and a few people had jokes that I never cried. Like that was my thing. I just never cried. I couldn't
I didn't
cry
know this.
for movies. I couldn't cry for movies. I just couldn't cry. And then early this year, when some stuff went down with relationships and stuff like that, I learned how to cry, I guess, and cried like relatively regularly. But it was fun. Like it was good. It was like a way of releasing emotions. It wasn't, obviously it didn't feel too good when I was doing it, but it was a good way of releasing emotions. I probably haven't cried for like 2 months, but I think it's good to cry. I think it's fun.
I cry like on a daily basis. Like I say, when I was looking at the rates of suicide, I just started crying. So, and
Yeah,
to be honest, I think that helps me a lot crying. That's my
100%.
way of,
It's validating. It's
yeah.
a physical, tangible way of expressing your emotion.
Yes, and I think it is a release. That was interesting. I didn't know that. You didn't cry. I had no idea. Learned something new.
Learn
I'm
things every
learning a few things today, Anthony. So next, what are Anthony's self-care tips?
Well, we kind of touched on this. I reckon following your own guide and feeling what you're feeling. So I think yeah, we spoke about this, how a psychologist and a counselor will cater stuff to your needs. And I think that's important too. I think just to be like, oh, there's this blanket rule of self-care tips that you need to follow is
Yeah.
incorrect, because you need to do what works for you.
Mm.
I reckon I do this every single night with my best friend. I write 2 things I'm grateful for. I just send in a message, 2 things I'm grateful for every single night. I think that's a good thing to do, because like I said, whether you're in or not in a negative filter mode, I think breaking negative thoughts with a couple of things that you're positive about, or a couple of things that you know you're grateful for, or make you feel better about the world, is good, because you're continually encouraging positive emotions.
Yes,
So me and my best friend said 2 things we're grateful for every single night, or we were grateful about that day for. I reckon talking to people is good. Makes
yes,
you feel good.
it does.
I like keeping myself busy. That's a self-care thing that I like doing. I don't like, if I'm feeling like caca.
I'm keeping
I don't
up.
know. If I'm feeling bad, I think I like keeping myself busy. I don't like feeling bad and then spending the whole day on my phone or spending the whole day on my couch, because that just makes me feel worse. So, but it's fine if that's what makes you feel good.
Yes.
If relaxing and resting makes you feel good. But for me, I like doing something and feeling like I've made a productive day out of a bad day, or helping someone and going and visiting someone that is probably lonely. That makes me feel better. It makes me feel like even if I don't feel it in that moment, it makes me feel like I've done something that I might not have done if I was in a bad mood. So it's actually encouraged me to do something positive. So there was a positive out of that bad mood, or that bad mental health day.
Yeah.
I like listening to music.
Yes.
I think you just need to do whatever you like,
Yeah.
or whatever you usually like.
And lastly, 3 things you can't live without.
Tying this back to mental health, I think having goals. I can't live without having goals. If I don't have goals, I like get in a rut and don't actually know what I'm doing.
So you have some direction in your life, which is really good.
100%. I have something that I'm working towards, something that I want to reach, something that's going to better me, something that's going to better the people around me.
Yes, I love
and I think included in that is working and doing uni and stuff like that. I think because that keeps you busy, obviously. I think keeping busy is important. Exactly. Another thing is family and friends. Like I said, for obvious reasons, talking to them, having people that love you, all that kind of stuff. And my third thing is my animals. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats. And
I was going to say, I was waiting. I'm like, you better say his animal.
Yeah, they cop a mention. They're really good when you're feeling low. I think they make you feel loved. That's what's cute about them.
Yes, and you're famous for your Dalmatians. Can you just tell the audience about your Dalmatians, please?
I've got some really weird Dalmatians. They like doing weird stuff. One of them rode a train once. So yeah, they're really interesting dogs.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for talking today. It's been
Thank you, Evangelia.
It's been so good and such an important and relevant topic. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences, knowledge, and advice from a male perspective, because it's definitely given me a big insight, and hopefully the audience as well. Before we finish up, if you are feeling down or you need someone to talk to, I will link some amazing helplines in the caption below, including Men's Line Australia, which supports men from mental health to family violence to being first-time dads. So once again, thank you so much for joining me, Anthony. It's been so much fun, and I hope
Thank you, Evange.
I hope whoever is watching taken something away from this, because you have definitely shined a light onto this issue, and in such a positive way. I'm super proud of you as well. And just remember,
thanks, Evange. I'm proud of you.
Just remember, you're not alone, guys. So you've got this.